Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, the American Booksellers for Free Expression debuts the Set Books Free project with a webinar on facilitating banned and diverse book donations.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about the Set Books Free project, which is a new initiative that the American Booksellers Association and American Booksellers for Free Expression, our Free Expression Initiative, are launching to try to create a pipeline supplying banned and diverse books to the places that most need them, the places that have been most targeted with book bans. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do to make that happen and how you can get involved. So as I said, the basic idea here is to create a banned and diverse books pipeline. What I'm observing here is that there is a capacity for and a desire in so many different stores to do something about the book ban crisis and to do something in a material way. And I think that this is what we can do, is to help areas that have been most targeted with bans and that as a result are suffering lacks in diverse books, that we can step in and create the donations of books that can make a difference. So I'll go through today the impetus for this project, some of the inspo, some of the places that are already doing this that sort of inspired this idea, the intention, what we hope to do with this project, the barriers to entry, i.e. the things that keep stores who want to do this from doing it, and what we think we can do to lower some of those barriers to entry, a few of the different models that I've seen in already working in stores or that I think could work in stores, what some of the next steps are for this program, but also for you as potential participants. And finally, we'll then introduce some of our partners, and those partners will be Maggie Takuda Hall, who is an author who many of you may know already, and is also one of the national organizers with Authors Against Book Bans. Carolyn Richmond from We Need Diverse Books. Lee Wind from the Independent Book Publishers Association, and Missy McGinnis from Red Wine and Blue. So the impetus for this project, why it is that we think this is not only a good idea, but necessary. So as a lot of you already know, book bans are rampant, and in a very real sense, they impact everyone. They attack all of our free expression rights, all of our rights to read and to transmit information. But it would not be true to say at this point that book bans harm everyone equally. In fact, there's disproportionate harm to folks who may need some kind of public help, whether it's through schools or libraries or some other kind of robust social program to access diverse books. That is to say, kids who do not have the resources to go to bookstores and buy books do not necessarily have bookstores as a safety net ensuring that access if books are banned. And so bookstores are absolutely an important safety net, but only for those with resources. So this is not news to many of you. I think a lot of booksellers know this, and it's one of the paradoxes of trying to use bookselling to do good and promote book access. We want to help, but we may not know how, or, as booksellers, which we have some of the thinnest margins of any small business out there, there's not generally going to be a lot of extra funds to outright donate books that the bookstore buys. However, that is not necessarily going to be the case for all of our customers. Some of our customers do have resources, and many of them are going to be as motivated as any of us to donate books. But while some people may have more resources financially, nobody has an abundance of time, at least nobody I know. And so we need to make that as easy as possible. It needs to be something that they can do at the register, that they can do spur of the moment, that they can see an attractive display of books, understand what the mission is, and then say, yes, I would like this to buy this book to be donated to someone who might not otherwise have access to it. And so the impetus of this program then is to make that possible. I think that we as booksellers can help our communities donate to other communities, or even those same communities, other people in our own communities who need but do not have access to diverse books. So this idea doesn't come from nowhere, and I wanted to shout out some of the amazing bookstores who have programs like this already. And it's not just for inspiration, but it's also proof of concept, proof that this is something that our customers have an appetite for, and something that can work within a traditional brick and mortar bookstore model, as well, I think, as more novel models like pop-ups or online-only stores. So the first of these is Hummingbird Books in Massachusetts. They have this incredible program. They were actually the first folks that I talked to when I started at ABA a little over a year ago. They were some of the first folks I talked to who had a program like this, so I really wanted to shout them out. What they do is they have a shelf of banned books that customers can buy, and which they fulfill those orders directly to Beaufort County, South Carolina, which some of you may know as the place where 97 books were challenged and removed from shelves pending review. It's an amazing program. It's a really good example of how you, even if you live in a community that you don't think is experiencing book bans, though I would encourage you to double check that because you might be surprised, but if you think you live in a community that's not experiencing book bans and you want to send banned and diverse books somewhere else that is experiencing more book bans, this is a really good program to look into. Second, Firestorm Books, a co-op in North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina. Incredible store. They ended up with over 22,000 banned books that had been removed from, I believe it was Duval County in Florida. And what Firestorm did was start a program called Banned Books Back, where anyone in Florida could request some of the books that they had acquired, some of the banned books, and they would send them back. They did an amazing fundraising effort that there was a lot of support for to help them send these books back, and they've been doing just that. Next, Second Star to the Right in Colorado. They've long had a program called Gay It Forward, which is I believe it's a free shelf in their store that customers can supply with books that they buy from the store that fulfill the mission of making sure that everyone has access to LGBTQ plus books. And that's one of the models that we'll talk about later, is just having a giveaway shelf in your store. There's sort of an honor system there, you might not necessarily be getting books to people in places further away, but that can be a great way to have an impact on your immediate community. And finally, Fabulosa Books in California. They, as I understand it, have partnered with multiple grassroots organizations that their customers are able to supply books with, and those grassroots organizations distribute those books to the communities that they serve. So this is another model that is an inspiration for what we're doing now. And there are other stores doing this. I've already heard from some of you who are doing this, but these are just a selection to give you a sense of how this works when it's already working. So what are we trying to do here? A few things. First, we know that there's a need. We know that book bans and other types of chilling effects on literary free expression have caused some kids, especially who don't have access to books, to make that worse. The diversity of books is already a huge concern, even with all the resources in the world in terms of what is getting published and what is being distributed. But in cases where book bans are occurring, they disproportionately target LGBTQ plus and BIPOC books, both in terms of authors and subject matter. And so there is a need for these books in many, many areas across the country. At the same time, we know from some of the proof of concept examples that I mentioned before, as well as just however many of our customers and non-book industry people who have talked to us about book bans are so horrible. What can we do about it? Maybe this is a conversation you've had when someone is seeing your banned books week display. This is, I believe, a built-in supply potentially of banned books. I think that this is a customer base that is willing to spend money that they might not otherwise spend on books for themselves, that they would be willing to donate to make sure that others have access to those books that are being banned. So, second, on a systemic level, I think that this has the potential to create a disincentive to ban books, or at least contribute to the many, many different actions that are trying to create that disincentive. So imagine, for as long as you can bear it, that you are someone who wants to ban a book. If you know that as soon as you ban it, copies of that book are going to pop up everywhere in the community as well as many other places, it then is going to become not only counterintuitive, but self-defeating to ban that book. So obviously that is an ideal scenario that would require a massive and a program on a massive scale. But there's a lot of you who I already know are interested in this. So I think we might be able to get closer to that, or at least moving that needle than you might otherwise think. Second, and this is probably the most important one, and third, this is probably the most important one. We need to make sure that everyone, especially the communities who most need it, are able to find diverse representation in literature. And that is exactly what book bans are targeting. They're not subtle about it. They don't even always try to conceal what they're doing. There is at least, I think that this number is probably higher, but at least 47% of banned books since in 2023, according to ALA's numbers, feature either BIPOC characters or LGBTQ plus characters. So these are the books that marginalized kids most need to see, the books that they can see themselves in, the books that tell them that they have a future and that they belong. And that's not just a matter of helping those kids see themselves. It is also a matter of helping those kids create an interest in literature. It is so much harder to become a reader as a kid if you do not see books as a place that you belong. If kids are going to the library and not seeing themselves there, it is going to be so much less enticing to come back to that library, to come back to that school media center. So in making sure that everyone has access to diverse books, we're also helping create the next generation of readers and helping kids get excited about books. All kids get excited about books. And finally, I'm an idealist in a lot of ways, but I'm not an idealist in terms of what I think the financial capacities of many small bookstores is, especially. So I recognize that this needs to be a program in order for it to be practicable for as many bookstores as we need it to be. That it also needs to be a program that can help you generate revenue. That not only are you not donating money in order to make this happen, that you can do the thing that you do best, selling books, while doing good. The barriers to entry that we're going to need to overcome. First, the process of overhead and organizing. The overhead, there's a certain irreducible extent to which we'll need to overcome that. I saw a hand in the chat. If you want to put a question in the Q&A, we'll be able to come to those questions afterwards. There's a certain irreducible extent to which the overhead is something that we'll have to overcome. It will require dedicating shelf space. It will require staff time, right? There's no way to get around that. But what I think that we can do, and when I say we, I mean ABA and our partners, is help with the organizing part, help put you in touch with some of the organizations that you can partner with, and at least take that part out of it. Take the sort of finding it and figuring it out. Ideally, over time, I would like us to create some assets that you can use to help publicize your event. Distribution. One of the hard parts about donating books is figuring out who needs them and getting them there. So the distribution is always going to be difficult in the sense of shipping costs, right? And that comes back to the overhead. We can talk about some possible models for ways to get around that. But in terms of distribution, the logic of trying to match you with grassroots organizations is that they're the ones who are in a position to know who needs the books, to know what books are being banned in a certain area. And ideally, if we can sort of help you ship these books to the grassroots organizations, then they can do the rest. The experts can do the experts in a particular area can help get the books in hands. And of course, we all know the atmosphere that we're working in, right? If books are being banned in the first place, and some stores have had a lot of pushback against drag story hours and things, there's a whole lot of disinformation about the kinds of books that we're talking about donating. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that there is the possibility that some people in your community or just on the internet are not going to like this program. Again, whenever you're getting any kind of harassment online or anything like that, please reach out to abfe at bookweb.org, abfe at bookweb.org. And we have best practices for dealing with that. But again, there's a certain irreducible amount to which this is just a risk that is going to come with it. And then finally, sustaining customer interest. I think when this is new, there's going to be more interest from customers. There's likely to be a lot of donations at the beginning, and those could tail off over time. I think continually refreshing the list, refreshing the curated list with maybe new recent bans in your state, or if there are other ways that you can refresh it, working with the grassroots organization that you're paired with to continue refreshing that feed. I think that's another way to keep catching your customers' eyes. But that's another thing that I would love to hear some ideas for so that we can kind of share them with the group. And in terms of how to actually make this work, again, kind of coming back to some of the inspiration that I was talking about before, they're all doing this in different ways. As I mentioned, Second Star to the Right has had incredible success with a giveaway shelf, books that customers buy that are then, as I understand it, given away to folks who need them. There's kind of an honor system thing here, that people that the people who need the books are taking them, but it's a really sort of low. I don't want to undersell it because there's a whole lot of organization that goes into it, but it's in some ways there's less shipping involved. It's the simplest one. You don't need to partner with anybody. But these next three are the ones where I think that the program that I'm trying to start putting together here and soft launching, this is where we can help. If you want to work with banned bookmobiles, I'm going to introduce Missy from Red Wine and Blue after this. Red Wine and Blue has an incredible system of banned bookmobiles, and there are other grassroots organizations that have banned bookmobiles that can go around to multiple locations in an area and give away banned books where they're most needed. Red Wine and Blue is one example of a grassroots organizations. I'm starting to work to make connections with other grassroots organizations in different areas around the country who, again, have that in-depth knowledge of their area and can get the books where they're most needed. And finally, working with educators. This is something that our partner, who is not able to join us today, but is interested in being involved, We Need Diverse Books. They have an incredible infrastructure for getting requests from educators that we could potentially and hope to be able to pair you with so that you could supply classroom libraries. Classroom libraries are an incredible way to make sure students have access to books, even if the representative books aren't going to be on the curriculum, even if there are barriers having them in the library. Sometimes there's more leeway with classroom libraries, though of course we've seen those attacked as well. So that's the theory, right? In terms of the practice, the immediate next step is to fill out the interest form that I have here And excuse me, after I stop sharing my screen, I will drop that link in the chat. And what that is going to do is just say, yes, I'm interested. I want to get more information. It's also going to ask if you have a program like this already. And if so, if there's any information you can share about who you're partnering with, if you think they'd be fine with that. If, of course, please check with them first. You could email it to us afterwards. But that's going to help me start filling out the other side of this equation, which is the grassroots organizations who are able to distribute these books. If you know of any such organizations, please, again, email me, abfi@bookweb.org. A couple of you have already done so. I already have some that I'm working with, but we can be more effective the more organizations we have who are able to do this. So after you fill out this form and after I've started gathering those grassroots organizations who are interested in being involved, as I'm able to, I'll match stores with distributors. I'll reach out to you. It'll be a conversation. Maybe you want to work locally. Maybe you want to send books further away if you believe you live in a lower ban area. And then what I'll do essentially is put you in touch and let you sort it out, because every organization, every store is going to have a different model that works best for them. And then finally, start thinking about the model that you think is going to work best for your store. Among, but not exclusively, those that I listed before. Finally, if I'm missing something huge, if there's something that you need to make sure, if there's another barrier for entry that you think we can lower for you, you don't need to have the solution. Just tell me about it. Email abfi@bookweb.org. The more troubleshooting I can do in advance, the smoother the launch is going to be. And then finally, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to introduce some of the partners who are already interested in working with us. And I'm going to start with Maggie Takuta Hall from Authors Against Book Bans, an incredible organization that many of you have already heard of. And indeed, many of you have probably hand-sold Maggie's books in your store. So Maggie, please tell us a little bit about your work with Authors Against Book Bans.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me here today, Philomena. I'm so excited you guys are getting this going. I was an independent bookseller for a really long time with Books Inc., and I'm familiar with the overhead cost of doing programs like this and the difficulty of finding staffing for all the different initiatives that you're interested in doing. And so I'm so grateful for you guys for expressing interest in this and for being willing to institute some of this work in your own stores. I'm local to the Bay Area, so Fabulosa is local to me, and we're so proud of the work that they have been doing. And in fact, they were very much the impetus for us having this discussion and doing this kind of work on a larger scale. And so shout out to Becca and Fabulosa Books for the incredible work that you guys have been doing there. Like Philomena said, I'm one of the leaders of Authors Against Book Bans, which is a nationally led, grassroots organized group of about 2,000 authors right now, but always growing. We have people in every single state across the country, sometimes not many people, but often large groups of people. And we're just trying to organize authors in this moment, because obviously our publishing partners are not always as active as we wish they were. And we realized that our voices were necessary in this fight as well. Nobody else was going to solve it without our participation. And to that end, we're trying to treat Banned Books Week this year like kind of a hard launch for the group. And in general, Banned Books Week has been sort of a wonderful way. It came up during the 80s when there was sort of a religious moral panic around Satanism and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, and which feels relatively quaint to what we are facing now, which is an organized right-wing extremist response to gains made by different groups, and in sort of like a pushback against all of that. And so I'm going to drop in the chat a doc that we created for all of our members, but that we would also like for anyone who's in the literary community to take a look at for Banned Books Week this year to make the events a little bit different. I think the time for a quiet display being erected with To Kill a Mockingbird and Captain Underpants and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark has kind of come and gone. And we're in a really different moment in this fight where that demands our action and our participation. And authors all across the country are going to be putting on these kinds of events, but we encourage you to do them whether or not you have an author local to you that is spearheading one. That being said, if you do decide you would like to do one of these banned books event, they can be a really good event to do if you wanted to do like a mass drop to a banned bookmobile and you wanted to have a big book party event that day to buy all those, have your customers and your community buy all those books so that you can make one mass shipment to a banned bookmobile. Authors Against Book Bans can try our level best to get authors out to that event and to help you drum up support and excitement within the community for those events. We know that even if some of these issues feel touchy, the vast majority of Americans do not agree with book banning on either side of the aisle. According to the American Library Association, it's something like 71% of Americans don't agree with book bans. And so it can be a really unifying and fun event to do in your community. And Authors Against Book Bans is there to help you. We recommend things like State House, Town Hall, or Public Library read-ins, postcard or letter writing campaigns. You can do things like a banned book sale to send to communities in need. And this can be either, you can work with Philomena on these to either do kind of a trickle of donations or to do one mass donation through Red Wine and Blue. But at all of them, we recommend having some component of voter registration, checking or being able to register at the event. If that just means one person with an iPad walking around saying, hey, do you want to check your voter registration? Hey, do you want to make sure that you're registered? We highly recommend that because down ballot voting is the #1 way that we can prevent bans from taking place in the first, like to nip it in the bud. But in general, if your store is doing anything like this, let Philomena know, but also let Authors Against Book Bans know. We are on Instagram. You can also email authorsagainstbookbans@gmail.com. Sorry, I'm going to put that in the chat too. And we will do our best to help publicize it and to share it with our members and to make sure that our community is supporting yours in this moment because none of us are alone in this fight.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Next, I'm going to introduce Missy McGinnis from Red Wine and Blue. Missy, go ahead.
Still haven't gotten the hang of that, I guess. I'm still on mute. Thank you, Philomena, and thank you, Maggie. I work best with slides. So I had developed a few slides that I thought I would share to just say what my organization is and the kind of work that we've been doing in with book banning and opposing book banning. So just as a quick high level, my organization is Red Wine and Blue. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a nonprofit organization that's working to defeat right-wing extremism. And we specifically work with suburban women, but we actually welcome sort of all comers. And we have been around for more than 5 years now, and we have more than 500,000 people in our network. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about two of the ways that we can hopefully work together. So I am the director of our Trouble Nation program, which I will tell you about on the next slide. And we have a lot of our members, of those 500,000 members, really are, very opposed to book banning and want to do what they can to combat that. So let me go to the next slide. So our Trouble Nation program, the one that I run, it's our national grassroots organizing program, and we've been launched for almost exactly 11 months now. And in the last 11 months, we've had 460, actually, I think we're at 463 at this moment, grassroots groups across the country that have formed, and that we help them connect them to content and materials and event ideas and that sort of thing for them to be the most successful they can be organizing in their community. And I think you can see that hopefully there's a dot near all of you on this map. And so each dot represents a grassroots group. We're in all but all but one state. We're in every state except for Mississippi, although I think this time next week that should be changed because we have a group that's forming. So that's pretty exciting. So Philomena and Maggie both referred to banned bookmobiles, and I just wanted to tell you this is a program that we've developed at Red Wine and Blue. I wanted to share with you a little bit about what it is. And so this program is something I think we launched it last year, and the idea is to get books in the hands of communities, the people, especially the communities where these books are being banned, and let's raise awareness of this problem. And so the idea is that there's a kit that gets sent to an organizer or a group, like one of those dots on the map, that will contain a bunch of items. So in a perfect world, these kits contained about 60 banned books because we want to get these out there. And that's, I think, what we're talking about here today. And then we also, Red, Wine, and Blue, would send all of these organizers and groups some signage, stickers, bookmarks, an informational flyer, just different information so they can educate their communities about book banning. And so the way that these bookmobiles work is like, as the title suggests, and this picture shows, looks like you can just throw a magnet on your minivan and go into a parking lot, maybe outside of a school board meeting or a city council meeting or in a library. Lots of options there. And you can hand out banned books. You can also do tabling at fairs and community events, and also banned book bingo events. And what is that program, you might ask? That program is a program that we developed that is a very popular event that makes combating book banning fun. We've been running this program over the past year, and we found they're very, very popular events. Like, sometimes it can be hard if you're organizing an event in a community. Sometimes, you're not sure how many people you're going to get. Banned book bingo gets butts in the seats. And it's like, you can see some pictures from events that we've had, that they're sort of lively events with a lot of people. And what we've just updated our materials from last year. And actually, it's like literally kind of happening as we speak. So if you download the toolkit right now, you may see the old toolkit, but I'm hoping by the end of today, our 2.0 version of Banned Book Bingo will be completely live. But what it has is that it's basically, there's about 75, I think there's actually 78 books that have been, commonly banned across the country. And it includes the reasons that they've been banned, the authors, and a brief summary of each book. And it's just a great way to raise awareness, and just people, tend to have fun with it. And so this here is this author. It's an author of a banned book. It's A.S. King, I think. If you may know her, and I apologize if I don't, but you can see we get authors to attend these events as well. So the idea that we kind of are seeing, like the way that this could all come together is that, like, our program, Trouble Nation, we can connect local groups with these opportunities, and they can plan an event. Maybe they partner with an independent bookseller, and this is an example of that. And in a banned book bingo event that happened in Canton, Ohio recently, draw attendees and fund by having banned book bingo. The author that, you could connect with a local author in your area. The local author talks about the problem of book banning, maybe calls the bingo game. And then there's the banned bookmobile that actually distributes these banned books. And altogether, that would come to be an incredible opportunity, to educate in communities. So just so you know, like in terms of process to pull all these pieces together, what we've developed is a form that actually doesn't require action by you at this point. I just wanted to show you our thinking about this process, is that we would share this form with the group, the groups that are part of our Trouble Nation program. And if they want to do a program like this, they would fill out the form and they could say kind of, what are they thinking? I would like a banned bookmobile kit sent to me. And, I would love a connection with a local author. And many of these groups already do have connections with independent booksellers in their area. But if they don't, well, number one, this form encourages them to share who they're working with. And then also, if they don't, then I would love, that then Philomena and you all can hopefully, help find a local bookstore that they can connect with. And then the idea, in order to save on costs, is that the books, assuming that, that this program is successful, then the books could be shipped directly to an organizer or a local group leader to make it successful. So we're pretty excited about the opportunities here. And if you want to reach me, I can put this in the chat as well. But my name's Missy McGinnis. My email address is very simple, missy@redwine.blue. And thank you. I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Missy. Next, I'm going to introduce Lee Wind from Independent Book Publishers Association. Before I hand it over to Lee, we'll have a little bit of time after Lee has a chance to speak for Q&A. So as Lee wraps up, if you want to start dropping your questions and answers in the Q&A tab, then we'll be able to get to those afterwards. But Lee, go ahead and take it away.
Super. I don't have slides today. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit of a slacker, but I have a lot of passion and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much, Philomena. Indie booksellers, y'all rock. And I'm excited because I wanted to tell you about this program that IBPA is part of putting out in the world. And we're in soft launch right now, as Maggie was alluding to, soft launch versus hard launch. So we go public on September 9 with We Are Stronger Than Censorship. It has a couple of ideas behind it. One is very much that disincentive to ban books that Philomena was mentioning in a slightly different way. We are going to do a count of all the bans and challenges that happen in the month of September, and then we are going to buy and donate at least 2 copies for every of a book for every book challenge or ban in September, and then maybe grow from there. But so the original goal is for us to buy and donate 2,000 books, because it's looking like it's almost 1,000 books a month that are on average being banned right now. I didn't come up with this alone. I've been working with Taslin Magnuson, who is a freelancer, and she's sort of the person that holds all the data on book bans across the nation. She works for PEN America and for every library. IBPA is a nonprofit. We represent basically publishers that aren't the big 5 corporations that are publishing. So usually in an independent bookstore, we're like 1 out of every 5 books is from an indie publisher. But the thing that's not really talked about a lot about book bans to the general public is that it's less about the 10 books that are the top 10 list or the books that are actually on the banned list. It's more about the chilling effect and the fear that librarians and teachers have about bringing books into their collection, even when they know that those books would be super helpful to their students or to their patrons. They're just afraid. And so we've been hearing from independent publishers, this is a huge impact on them. Just one example, Levine Querido, they have Newbery winners. They put out beautiful books. I'm not saying that just because they published one of my picture books, because I'm an author outside of my day job hat. But they're saying that their sales to schools and libraries are down 50%. That is huge for an independent publisher that doesn't have a 50-year backlist of titles that is driving the engine of their success. So, we were trying to come up with, how do we go on the offense about book bans? So that's where this idea for hey, for every ban, we're going to buy and donate 2 copies. But we're really trying to also focus on independent publishers, because the corporate publishers are selling Bibles, and they're, selling really conservative, they have very conservative imprints that they're also selling. So while it's impacting them on a sort of public facing level, on a financial level, it's not the same impact. So we want to sort of shift that discussion. We have, I'll drop a couple of links in the chat. We really are looking to get all the stakeholders in our industry involved. So one of the things we're looking to do is to say to bookstores, we'd love to partner with you. The request is basically, look through the 20 books that we're ultimately going to feature, and, figure out which ones might do well in your store. And then, we ask you to have at least one of them face out, so we can give you a shelf talker to put under it that says something about it. And basically the call to action is to your customers saying, hey, buy one of these books for you, and or buy one for us to donate. And then it becomes another sort of engine of you having books to donate, whichever way you decide to do it. As Philomena was saying, there's so many ways that you can get involved, but this would be something that we would also be an engine for driving interest and demand for. We have so far we have 8 publishers that have said yes, that are going to be part of the original class. You can see the current partners on our website. We also have a very cool logo, and we're going to be selling some swag, which includes t-shirts that say strong like a reader, strong like a bookseller, strong like an author. And the O of strong, which you can see on our logo if you click over to the We Are Stronger Than Censorship website, is a do not enter sign that's actually opening up into a book that is being read, which I think is pretty poetic and beautiful. So that's generally the idea. We're trying to put brakes on this runaway train, and we really think that everybody can be part of this solution. And something that Maggie says often, and which I think is brilliant, is like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, we are sort of a coalition. And the more involvement we have from booksellers, the better. And it doesn't have to just be my program. It could be any of these things, or it can be all of them. We just really want you to know that you're a big part of the solution here. And just like we can't be everywhere, you have the connections to your community. Like Maggie said, we were in this together, and this is how we're going to overcome it. So again, please check out the site. If you're interested in being a bookstore partner, fill out the form. If you have questions, just let me know. I will drop my email into the chat. I'm a little slow on emails these days, but I will get back to you, I promise. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
All right, thank you so much. So there's so many different ways that you can participate. Again, this is the softest of soft launches. I want to invite everyone in from the beginning so that we can make this the strongest possible program, as strong as it possibly can be. Some takeaways: you have a few links from all of us in the chat. I want to remind you about filling out the interest form so that I can keep in touch with you and let you know as things develop. Let's pivot to Q&A in a moment. So as I just kind of wrap up with some of these takeaways, if you want to start putting your questions in the chat, that way we can make sure to address them with the time we have left. There should be a Q&A button that you can fill out there. So again, fill out that form for interest. I'll be able to keep in touch with you that way. Check out the other links that folks put in the chat. And again, tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what are the barriers to entry that you're worried about that would stop you from participating in this program. Because if we know about those from the beginning, then we can start to structure it in a way that'll help you get around them. Lee, go ahead.
I actually had a question for Missy. Missy, in regards to the Banned Books Bingo, what is the mechanism for books being donated through that event? Do they have to buy a book to donate to participate in the bingo, or how does that work?
That actually, so what we've done with Banned Book Bingo is that typically they don't have to buy a book to participate. Actually, that's a really interesting idea, though. I mean, the one couple of the events that I was showing in the pictures, like one was people did buy tickets, but it benefited the ACLU of Ohio. That was the one that was in Canton, Ohio. And I think others may work a little bit separately. But the way that it kind of works is that people come and they play their game, and the prizes are banned books. And then there's also a independent bookseller there, hopefully selling banned books during that program. Does that make sense? But I like the idea that people could come and also do what Philomena was talking about before, is that maybe they could actively, just by show up, they could buy a few books that could then be donated into the community. So that's a really great idea.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I will give it a little bit more time in case anyone wants to add one. Okay, yeah, so I have a question from a bookseller in Washington County, Utah. Right, so this is one of the counties in Utah most responsible for the 13 books banned in Utah. Some of you, just to fill in the blanks here, you might have heard that Utah passed a law that went into effect at the beginning of July that said if a book is banned under certain conditions in 3 school districts or an equivalent number of school districts and charter schools, it'd be banned statewide. So that's what's being referred to there. So the question is how bookstores in Texas and Florida have dealt with the book bans in their states. And in this case, the store has offered banned books for donation. It's a great question. I have heard of a number of different ways. One way is participating in ABA's lawsuits as plaintiffs against the laws that have gone into banned books. That's the case in Texas, not so much in Florida. But this is a great question, and that's one of the things where if you are a store in Texas and Florida and you've already been doing this work and you want to let me know, fill me in about the specific things that you are doing that I can then, use to inform the models that we put together for other stores. In some cases, that's raising awareness, right? In some cases, it is just being a place that people can come to get these stores. But of course, that raises the access issues that I was talking about before. I have another question. We don't have an outright ban, but our board of supervisors has created a committee of 5 parents who are deciding which books are appropriate for children to check out in Fresno County libraries. Would your community qualify as one with a book ban in place?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Maggie, I saw you. Go ahead if you want to speak.
This just gets me real heated.
Yeah.
So bans is a term that refers to anything that blocks people's access to a book, particularly, and usually it's kids' access, but for any access to a book. So if that means reshelving, if that means making parents sign an affidavit before they allow their children to go into the children's section of a library, which is what we've been seeing in Idaho, all of that constitutes a ban, anything that makes it difficult for people to get it. And so what's going on in Fresno would absolutely qualify as a ban. And this movement to sort of privatize the work of librarians and educators is very much a piece of that. And it is worth knowing for everybody who's here that the long-term goal of bans isn't just to take the books away from readers, it's to defund all of our institutions of public learning. That's public libraries, that's public schools. And so this is very much a piece of that. And so I would organize accordingly. And Ashley, you're welcome to reach out to me directly. I will DM you my personal email address so that I can connect you to the California chapter of Authors Against Book Bans to see what we can do to support you in your community right now.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore part of what Maggie said, which is that any action or threatened action that reduces access to books where they would otherwise be available is a book ban. There's so much time and effort going into redefining book bans so that it's like, oh, if you can buy it on Amazon, then it's not a book ban. First of all, they always say Amazon, they never say independent bookstores. That just kind of boils my sauce a little bit, but it's beside the point. It doesn't need to be banned everywhere in America for it to be a banned book. If it's banned somewhere in America in some context, then it is a banned book in the United States. So it's a great question, Ashley. And again, please feel free to reach out to me as well, in addition to Maggie, again, abfi@bookweb.org, and I'd be happy to talk more about what's going on. We have another question. How can non-traditional bookstores, mobile, pop-up, etc., also be able to participate effectively? I get a lot of book donations each week by traveling to communities to make it convenient for readers to donate and want to help. Yeah, that's such a great point. There's no reason you have to be a traditional brick and mortar bookstore to participate in this. I mean, even I've seen brick and mortar bookstores that have it's kind of structured like a wedding registry essentially on their sites that allows folks to go to their website, buy a book that someone else has requested, and then thus making sure that there's a diversity of books offered. So when one person donates it, it's taken off the list and people can then donate the rest of the ones on the list. So in those terms, if it's a mobile bookstore, an online store, absolutely, we can think about ways to help at your events, drive people to the site, and then be able to supply books to this donation. In fact, in some ways, I think it could allow you to do things that a brick and mortar store can't, just as brick and mortar stores might be able to do things that you can't. So every possible model, so important. Go
It's
ahead,
also
Maggie.
where if you do have an event that you're going to be doing in a new location or something and you want to make it into a party, if that's part of what you're doing, you should also reach out to Authors Against Book Bans and see if we can't partner to make it more of an event and make it more fun.
Yeah, and in some ways what Missy is describing with the banned book parties and banned book bingo, like all of that seems like stuff that a mobile pop-up bookstore could be a perfect partner for.
I just wanted to say that I already heard from Erin in the Atlanta area, so I was thrilled to get your email. And so if others are intrigued by what we were talking about, please reach out, missy@redwine.blue.
And there's a question about authors in Utah. I don't, Maggie, maybe that's a question for you for Authors Against Book Bans.
We have 45 authors in Utah who are signed up as part of Authors Against Book Bans. Jamil, oh God, her last name is escaping me, and Jennifer Nielsen are the chapter leads in Utah, and we would be happy to connect you to them. One of our ethos for Authors Against Book Bans is that we swore up and down to our more famous authors that we were not going to barrage them with every single request for every famous author that comes in. And so we're not like a speaking agency, but what we can do is connect you to the chapter leads who will then work with you to get authors to whatever it is that you know Jennifer. Great. Jennifer's the leader in Utah. She can work with you directly to get Utah authors to your Utah events.
Yeah, and that just reiterating that kind of everybody working together to kind of figure out how to get authors at events that are at your store that are also supporting a banned bookmobile, that are also selling independently published banned books. Like that kind of synergy is where we can truly be unstoppable.
And what's really great about it too is that one of the kind of quiet things that's happening with this is that the bottom line for authors is being destroyed with the book banning. And so working with an independent bookseller to sell banned books and to do this kind of work is extra meaningful, not just because of the money that stays in the community, but because the authors actually get paid their royalties for those sales. I had to learn actually the hard way in this process that when we just go directly to publishers and beg them for donations, authors don't necessarily get those royalties. There are different contracts for different authors, and most of them don't cover any kind of thing. And so it would be just sort of a compounding problem to beg off for copies of Melissa by Alex Gino from Scholastic. Scholastic might give them to you, but then Alex wouldn't get that money. And I don't know about you, but I'm all about banned authors getting their bag. And so I'm really excited that we're all working together on this.
Yeah, and you know, I think that stepping into that gap, right, and figuring out ways to compensate some of the lost revenue for authors who are getting banned, again, the ones as Lee was talking about, who are below that threshold of the top 10 list, who maybe don't get as much publicity, those authors are still losing author events. Maybe some of you have had author events with schools canceled because of disinformation about the books or the authors, or just the general atmosphere of censorship. This is another thing that recommends the selling books for donation model, because this is something that, as Maggie was saying, is going to drive that more revenue and sort of lost royalties that would come from those lost sales.
And I mean, frankly, it's better for the publishers too, and the bookstores, right? Like it's better for everybody in the whole ecosystem if we can get the books purchased and then donate them. Because we want bookstores to exist, we want indie publishers to exist, we want authors to be able to exist without having 16 day jobs.
And you know, I think the last thing that, and unless there are any more questions, maybe we can close it up a little bit early, but of course, all of the missing piece here is going to be customer interest, right? We still need to sort of figure out that piece, but that's where you as booksellers come in, doing what you do best, selling books. But also, how many people do you know who hear about the banned book crisis and are disgusted by it and have no idea what they can do? This is something they can do. This is a way that they can go to their local indie and support that ecosystem while getting books to kids who need them. So I think as fired up as we all are about this, I think that's going to translate directly into engagement from your customers.
One last thing I put in the chat is a link to a post that Authors Against Book Bans made about using the 5Calls app. We recently worked with them to create a call script that you can use all over the country to call your state level representatives to express your disapproval of book bans in general. It's a small action. It takes about 3 minutes to do, and you could do it literally every day if you're a problem like me. And already my state senator's office knows my name. And when I start talking, they're like, you don't like book bans. And I'm like, correct. Have a good day. So there's a really easy action you can take every day, regardless of your ability to do this particular kind of program.
Okay, and so I think that you sort of answered the question that was just in the chat, Maggie. Can they put that link in their newsletter?
Please do.
Great.
I would never stop you from sharing our information. And in fact, if you would like the actual files for those images instead of our Instagram post, I'm happy to send those to you as well. Who asked that? Was that Tanya again? I'm going to just put my email address in there. You can email me and ask me for those, and I will send them to you. Anyone who's willing to share that in their newsletter is great.
All right. Maggie, Lee, Missy, thank you so much for joining us. And everyone who took the time to join this call, thank you for coming. And please, again, fill out that form. I'm going to put it one more time in the chat. And thanks for bearing with us for my early technical difficulties. Zoom webinars never fails to amuse. And I hope you all have a good day. And again, please email me if there are any questions, if you want to sign up, but have some more questions that I can answer before that. Or again, if I'm missing anything that needs to be solved before this can be the strongest possible program, or if you have grassroots organizations to connect me to, please. And I'm going to put that email in the chat, abfi@bookweb.org. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Philomena.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!